Hey, what's up, guys? It's Ward. Today, I wanted to invite you in on a story that I've been a part of over the last 5 years. It goes back to a project that I was managing in Avon Park, and I was super passionate about that project. We were replacing a lot of legacy pipe and doing a lot of really great things for the community. But I had an interesting problem. So at the time, I was managing all of my projects with Microsoft Excel. And it was really frustrating because I had this team. I was really passionate about the team. We were meeting every morning, discussing what we were going to do throughout the day, and meeting weekly to discuss what we were going to do throughout the week. And it was really great. The problem was throughout the day, while they went out into the field and started, inspecting or working on this pipeline, I was stuck in the office and I wasn't doing things that I felt were actually providing value to them. I was just looking at spreadsheets, reviewing their data from the previous day, and it was kind of frustrating. My passion is being out in the field, and I think a lot of people in construction also have that same passion. But yet, there I was spending 20 hours using Microsoft Excel instead of actually driving the results that I wanted to see on those projects. And so I started looking out for some solutions, right? So leadership really had those reports. They needed to get those reports to have a pulse check on those projects. And of course, at the time, I was really new to project management. And so I didn't have any established systems that would help me drive those results while still giving leadership what they needed. It started this whole journey into finding out what tool was going to support me planning legacy pipeline projects and being able to execute those projects while still achieving the results that I wanted to. So within a couple of searches, I looked for Monday.com, I looked at Procore, I looked at a couple other options, and really all I found was this weird spreadsheet tool that they called Smartsheet, right? And that was really funny because I had mentioned it to leadership and they were really, really supportive of trying this new tool out. So I jumped over into Smartsheet and I had realized I have a problem. Smartsheet's a blank slate, right? Like Smartsheet is by no means at this time going to manage and plan these legacy pipeline projects. And if you've ever managed a legacy pipeline project, they can be fairly complex. We're certainly not building out like skyscrapers by any stretch of the imagination, but we're definitely getting our hands dirty, right? And so one of the things that I had to start doing was figuring out, well, I've already got all of these workflows built in Excel. What can I do to start using the tool? Now, that leads to the second problem. So the first problem is spending 20 hours generating leadership reports, analyzing data, and spending all this time in spreadsheets. But the second problem is really how do we select the solution, right? So I chose Smartsheet, but it's not clear to me why I chose it. And it certainly at that time wasn't possible for me to explain to anybody why Smartsheet was better than any of the other tools. So it goes back to this project I was working on. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you would know that I had posted a couple of days ago about this tricky problem, right? Trying to find a solution that fits your specific workflow is fraught with risk because the market is saturated with options. It is difficult to decide which platform is best, leading to analysis paralysis where the fear of picking the wrong tool prevents any action at all. And that is exactly where I found myself. And I spent a couple of days recently trying to understand this, to better understand my customers and why I chose the tool to begin with. And so that really brings me to this video and why I wanted to take some time to explain how to select the right solution. So first, let's dive in. I did a little bit of market research and found a couple of really cool metrics on Smartsheet. So I used our good friend Gemini, and again, we're not doing complicated rocket science here, really just trying to get a high level and estimate about how many customers Smartsheet has. So according to our friend Gemini, Smartsheet has about 77,000 total customers. Now, I think that this is going to help us understand why is the selection problem even a thing, right? And so when you consider what industry, legacy pipeline replacement projects would fall in, first and foremost, we'd say utilities, right? But it's also a variant of construction because utilities is a really big industry. And really specifically, I was constructing a new pipeline. And so when you look at their breakdown, you see that there's about 5.4% of all of their customers are in construction or real estate. And I'm sure maybe it's a split where the majority's construction and a majority or a minority is real estate. So out of 77,000 customers, 5.4 of those customers are in construction and real estate. So what that equates to is about 4,158 construction and real estate customers over at Smartsheet. It's really not that much. And we're talking about total accounts, right? Not total users or anything like that. And out of those 4,158, what does that make up in terms of the entire market share? So I did a little bit of research on what the entire market share would be. And we're an estimate about 1.14 million construction and real estate firms in the United States. So if you go back to about 4,000 construction and real estate customers currently in Smartsheet, and then you reflect that on the total market size of 1.14 million firms out there in America, that leaves us with a grand, massive total of 0.3%. And so I thought a little bit about this selection problem and why is this thing even an issue? And you might talk to some process improvement folks. I know quite a bit of them, and they're really, really smart guys. And they'll tell you, you always start with the problem first and then you solve for your process. But this is project-based work, which is slightly different, especially in the construction space. And the reasons for that we're not going to go into right now. But when we talk about would the real world look like if only 0.3% of an entire market was using a platform, that would look at like if Ward went out onto LinkedIn, and if I go out on LinkedIn and I start talking to a whole bunch of different folks about this great new solution within Smartsheet, most of them are going to say, yeah, I don't see it. And rightfully so. And I would say more than likely, that's only because like 1 out of 3,000 firms are currently using Smartsheet divided across real estate and construction. And so you'd think like the name brand tool for construction and real estate, things come to mind like Procore. What doesn't come to mind is Smartsheet. But what I found Smartsheet did really, really well when I first unboxed the tool and started using it was it allowed me to play around with the specific workflow that I was working on. And I think that was one of the major attractive features that Smartsheet had. I was able to bring my Excel tools into Smartsheet and start playing around. Now, that's also a drawback. And it's a drawback because I started Skyway Consulting back in 2023. And since then, I have been working on developing this sort of unicorn legacy pipeline or project management tool for pipeline projects. And it wasn't until now that I actually found a solution that I found was best. Now, I certainly don't expect any of my customers to go out and start a consulting company based totally on Smartsheet and spend the rest 3 years of their lives until 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes building out a solution that can work in Smartsheet. And a lot of you might say, well, Ward, why would it even take that long? What are you doing in there? Why are you trying it? And the reason is it takes a little bit of time to trial through things. I've worked with a bunch of different solar. I've worked with some wind companies. I've worked with some window and door companies, all across the board, different kinds of organizations out of the construction real estate space. But specifically utilities, I wanted something that was going to be very simple, but something that addressed my needs. So I went for a long journey, right? Every project manager has a dream and originally to go and become a PMP, a certified project management professional. And so I went and learned, what does PMP say? What would PMP actually recommend of me in terms of how I should manage my projects and utilities? And the answer was, well, you've got 5 different process groups, 49 different processes, and 20 some odd documents that you want to keep track with. So I naturally went and took those documents, found some templates online, put them together into what I call a blueprint, and started running my projects through those. And that sounds like a fantastic idea. There's really nothing wrong with trying that. The problem is it's really, really complicated. And if you're in the utility space like I am, you'll know that sometimes, most often, utility projects, because of permitting agencies and different reasons like that, utility projects don't get that big. They don't have a life cycle that is years after years after years. They're really about the size of a permit, what the permitting agency might actually allow you to, like local municipalities, for example. So the projects aren't going to get overly large. And if they're not going to get overly large, then you have a pretty short life cycle of a project. And if you have a short life cycle of a project and you're managing 20 different documents for that short life cycle project, you're going to run into issues. And I did, right? And so what you end up with is you're managing this whole contraption, and the contraption starts to slow you down and things get a little frustrating. Now, that's only half of the problem. The other half of the problem is, how do I visualize my projects? And that's a problem, because when we talk about the specific workflow we need, if you're not just managing one, again, back to the short life cycle projects, managing projects in the natural gas industry or in the utility industry is kind of complex, right? Because you're not just managing one, you're managing maybe 100, maybe 500, maybe 600. And so if you're managing 600 as a project manager, that are total pipeline, right? There's somewhere inside of the initiate, plan, execute, monitor, control, and close out. There's somewhere in the midst of it in their life cycle. And you've got 600 of them. You multiply 600 by 20 and you have a disaster. So you need something that's sort of really small, something simple, something that meets the minimal viable sort of product expectations you'd expect out of a tool that could actually help you forecast, help you write schedules, help you budget. But budgeting is sort of strange and forecasting strange. If we're managing 600, you don't have the ability to go into the line items and track every single line item for all 600 projects. You'd beat yourself to death, and it wouldn't solve the original problem of spending 20 hours per week on writing leadership reports, right? So really the solution has to be something that's going to allow you more time in the field. So the other side of that problem is I need a map. If I'm managing 600 projects, I need a map that's going to show me where all of my projects are, what the status is of those projects, what the scope of work is of those projects, because geographically, our projects are spread across a fairly large geographical area, and it's important to know where to send resources, how to allocate our time, how to prioritize what needs to come first and what doesn't. And if somebody calls out from the field and says, hey, I have a question, you're going to need to tell them where that is and triage a little bit to understand what this guy's even asking you if you have a lot of projects. And so the tool has to have a map, and it has to be map focused. And that was where this ArcGIS mapping integration came with Smartsheet. Is in the perfect world, I'd be able to embed a Smartsheet, and embed a ArcGIS map inside of my Smartsheet environment, and then side by side, I could see my schedule, and I could see the map and the reflection of that project in the real space world. And so I had to go and learn Python for it, realistically. I didn't know of, and I didn't see a single tool out there off the shelf that I could go and buy that would give me the capabilities to see all of my projects on a map and be able to generate out a schedule, a forecast, and other things that would create a dashboard that I could send to leadership and keep leadership informed about the status of my project over its life cycle without beating my head up against the wall. And so that integration came to play. I learned how to write some code in order to get the two systems to talk. And that was all a result of the business that I had started. And again, going back to the point, you certainly don't want project managers going out and starting their own consulting firms just to be able to solve this problem. But that's what I did. And so then I go back to the original problem. And the original problem is trying to find a solution that fits your specific workflow. It's fraught with risk, right? There's so many different tools out there. What's going to work? And the answer is actually incredibly simple. The answer is the tool that works is the one that was built specifically for that workflow. And the question then becomes, is the workflow right and is it appropriate? But we're not going to cover those specific parameters yet. We're going to get to that in later videos. What we're going to cover is how do we use Smartsheet and ArcGIS to meet the needs of a legacy pipeline replacement project that can actually minimize the amount of time, maybe eliminate the amount of time that has to be spent generating out leadership reports so that project managers can spend more time driving results and less time digging through spreadsheets. And so I really think that when you look at the market share that Smartsheet has, you have a 0.3% of all of Smartsheet or all of the market share inside a Smartsheet. So Lord, what's the point? Why are you bringing this up? Why is this even a relevant topic? I think the reason is because when you go into Smartsheet, you don't see legacy pipeline replacement templates. What you see is IT PMO templates, different generic templates. And so you don't see yourself in the platform. And because you don't see yourself in the platform, you say this tool's not for me. But where my job comes in and where I see this huge opportunity to be able to sort of give back to the natural gas and utility industry that's kind of poured into my life throughout my entire career is to say, I'm going to take a stab at building this tool out into a demo that I can show you and be able to demonstrate how you can eliminate 20 hours of time a week building leadership reports, be able to see all of your projects on a single workflow, and be able to see those same projects on a map. And so I'm going to show the full force of what Smartsheet and ArcGIS integrations can do. And that way you don't have the same excuse I did 5 years ago saying there's not a single tool out there that can effectively manage replacement projects, utility projects, etc., because you'll be able to see the full force of this solution and hopefully be able to eliminate those 20 hours a week that you're spending behind a spreadsheet and give back towards driving the results of your projects and ultimately making your team better. And that's ultimately the value that we're trying to drive here. And so how do we solve the selection problem? Make a selection that's actually worth the project manager's time. So I hope you guys join me. We'll have some of those videos out this week. And I hope you find them valuable. If you want to see those videos, you can check us out on YouTube. You can like, comment, and if you're on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell. We've got some cool stuff out there for you. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. So stay tuned. Good luck out there. Be safe. And we'll see you soon.